Now, the European Union's new ambassador to Ghana, Rune Skinneberg, officially began his 4-year mission in September this year. But this isn't his first time in Ghana. Nearly 3 decades ago, he started his diplomatic career right here at the EU delegation in Accra, making his first posting sometime of homecoming. Well, with over 20 years of experience in European diplomacy, from Brussels to Malawi and Zambia, Ambassador Skinneberg now leads a renewed effort to strengthen EU-Ghana relations beyond development aid, with a sharper focus on trade, security, youth empowerment, and sustainability. Today, we explore that new chapter and what that means to Ghana for the EU's strategic interest in West Africa and for the future of his enduring partnership, in this particular enduring partnership with the EU. Thank you so much for joining us, Ambassador. How are you feeling? 30 years on, you're back in this country. How does it feel to be back in Ghana?
Yeah, thanks, Emefa, and thanks for having me this morning. No, I'm truly thrilled to be back. As you can imagine, it's a completely different Ghana that I'm finding now than I did in the mid-90s when I first arrived here at what is now the domestic airport.
Right.
But whilst everything, certainly in Accra, has changed, the one thing that remains the same is the warmth and the welcoming attitude of the Ghanaian people, and unfortunately my office building.
Oh, has it changed?
Not at all.
It's still the same. That must have brought you some nostalgic feeling.
Yes, but not unambiguous, because it was already a bit outdated then.
Okay.
So you can imagine today.
Well, years ago when you came, do you remember your favorite staple, what you were eating, and are you still eating that now?
So I have a feeling somehow that the fufu has been replaced by the jollof rice. Listen, so far I've been working far too many hours and explored too little. So I hope when we meet in a year or two that I will have much more stories to tell from my favorite staples and activities. But meanwhile, I'm still discovering. I'm very much in a landing mode, as you can imagine.
I can imagine.
And trying to get around and see people and make sure that they see me also.
Right, for all the years that you've been out, of course, you've been on diplomacy work, working strategically. You're back in Ghana as the ambassador. Let me in your vision, your goal, your ambition as ambassador.
So I think over the years, my role has changed significantly. I started out as a young development worker here in Ghana, and then the European Commission, as we were called then, was a development agency, a development partner to Ghana. Since then, Ghana has evolved, but so has the EU. And the EU is becoming much more of a union, much less of a development partner, much more of a diplomatic partner. It also means that my role has changed from doing development cooperation, from promoting European values and principles, to one where I'm supposedly promoting European interests. Now, that could sound like a bad thing, but as it happens in today's interconnected world, of course, the Ghanaian and the European interests are coinciding on a number of fronts. And the proof is that whilst the EU remains the #1 donor to Ghana, it is also the #1 trading partner, and it is the #1 investor in Ghana. So those elements, especially the trade and the investment, is something that I intend to focus on during my tenure here. We have 4 years. We have a lot of new and interesting tools coming from the EU that I intend to explore at a maximum to the benefit of Ghana, but also to the EU.
Right. I mean, that's quite a broad ambition and a very big goal as well. But I just as well see that it sits perfectly in the broad scope of the EU objective as well for us as Ghana. Currently in Ghana, as you've come to meet, what's the real relationship as it is, as we speak, the EU and Ghana? Let us in the relationship.
We have a very solid relationship. Not only do we have 50 years, next year it will be 50 years of physical presence in the country. We have a series of agreements that have governed our relationship. Now it's called the Samoa Agreement. We have very strong pillars. We have a security partnership, which is being developed. We have recently signed FLEG, so it's a forest or timber regulatory framework that is signed between the EU and Ghana. It's the second in the world, the first on the African continent, allowing for smooth, seamless timber trading between Ghana and the EU in a sustainable manner. We have, of course, very strong voting track, I would say, together also on the multilateral arena, notably when it comes to Russian aggression against Ukraine, where Ghana have been quite supportive. I know that Ghana is a founder of the non-alignment, that it likes to be the friends to everybody and the enemy of none. I also know in today's fragmented world, this is getting increasingly difficult, of course. And this is a relationship that I also want to cultivate.
Okay. Where particularly are you starting with? If you look at the goal of the EU and the kind of partnership we have as a country, very broad, though they're very interconnected, where would you like to start from in this country?
I think now I'm still in this assessment phase. Of course, I don't land in a vacuum. There was somebody before me. There has been a proper handover. I see what we're doing well and where we can do better.
Right.
But I also have to adapt to the context. So lots of people ask me about, oh, welcome to Ghana. What are you going to do about the Galamsey?
Did that surprise you?
It did, because Ghana today is a middle-income country, albeit lower middle income, and it's a well-functioning, it's a stable democracy, it's a peaceful island in the midst of very unruly water, but it's also an autonomous entity. And these issues are, of course, Ghanaian issues. We are here to support you in solving or addressing the challenges that you're facing. And when it comes to illegal fisheries, or it comes to Galamsey, this is ultimately things that need to be addressed politically. And that's definitely not my field.
Right.
What I can do is, when the right decisions are being made, then I can step in and offer our support. Because, of course, we support you in taking the right decision.
It's quite fascinating that the question of Galamsey has come to the fore for you. Many have said that for the EU, even if you could not maybe tackle it head on, because these are very direct issues in the country, and considering that Ghana is a sovereign country, they must deal with it politically, well willing for them, and then the EU would come to support. From where you sit, while I appreciate that you're still in the very formative stage, do you foresee certain decisions and actions that the EU can take that can compel Ghana, at least, you want to tackle the illegal mining and illegal fishing as well? Do you foresee, just on the face of it?
So I think that, first of all, I want to reiterate that we, as a long-standing partner to Ghana, we stand here ready to support. At the same time, it is clear that, for example, the Galamsey, the moment that the pollution from Galamsey affects the vegetables that Ghana is trying to export to the EU, there will be dire consequences, because it's not that we are sanctioning Ghana, it's simply that we do not, we don't want Ghanaian consumers, but certainly not European consumers, to eat sweet potatoes with the mercury residues in them. So there will be a stop, an arrest of the export to EU, which is something that Ghana doesn't want to see, and we don't want to see it. But we need to protect our people. That's our role. So there will be elements or scenarios that we want to avoid, and that is where we are ready to step in and help. How can we help? Well, we can support the political decisions. So the moment there is a decision that requires the establishment of a regulatory framework, the moment that there is a need for certain equipment to control developments, to assess pollution, that is where we can step in and assist.
Maybe let's take it one after the other. Ghana, just like the EU, of course, you may have been saddled, or you've had some hurdles with some tariff situations across board. And for Ghana as well, our president just announced the zero tariff with China, of course. I'm quite curious. The EU, are you imagining, are you anticipating some package in terms of tariffs for Ghana as well?
But we have it. We have it since 2016, and before that we had preferential access to Ghana. So we changed it because WTO told us that it was illegal to have the indiscriminatory free access that we had. And then we developed the economic partnership agreements to which Ghana has signed up, which gives them the best deal Ghana can imagine. Now, contrary to China, we have a balanced trade with Ghana. There's a negative trading balance for Ghana with China, whilst with Europe, it's very balanced. It's a few billion margin, so 360 billion both ways, I think, or 3.60 in terms of trading. So no, I guess zero tariffs is good. Balance is important. With EU, you have it both.
Okay.
You've had it for a long time.
Yeah, the one that existed already, you're going to be enforcing it, and which is balanced tariff.
Balanced tariff, but also balanced trade.
Okay.
No tariffs.
Okay. Okay. Let's talk about one thing that you mentioned in your earlier submission. You talked about the forest law. And I like to think this is throttling to climate conversations. Let me in on these laws.
Well, I think we have three focal sectors here in Ghana where we like to target our activities. One is economic transformation, one is sustainability, and one is peace and stability. Clearly, when it comes to sustainability, it describes itself in the wider climate-related context, but it's also something that is particularly relevant to Ghana, where we see that there are all these challenges. Now, the Ghanaian economy is based on, well, a lot of weight is based on the two pillars of cocoa and gold, both sectors that potentially can be quite harsh to the environment. And therefore, we want to assist Ghana to the extent that Ghana wants to be assisted in finding a sustainable way of exploring the potential of Ghana. And now, same when it comes to timber. You have a lot of timber. We are keen to have a timber trade with Europe, but we want it to be a sustainable timber trade.
Okay.
And this is with the FLAG, the forestry legislation framework that we have just signed with Ghana. This is what is assured. There's no need to do further due diligence. When you trade with Europe, Europe can import timber from Ghana because you have the processes and standards in place to ensure that your timber export is sustainable.
What does sustainable timber trade look like for you? Paint a picture for me.
Well, first of all, it means durable. It means that it is a resource that you can continue to benefit from in the future. Secondly, it means security for the European consumers, that they are not benefiting from an overexploitation of resources in Ghana, but that when they buy Ghanaian products, then they buy a sustainable product which is durable and which can continue to flow in. It means that trees are being planted when they're being cut.
Well, earlier you mentioned that, of course, but prior to your arrival in Ghana, one of the topical conversations was illegal mining. And you realize that it will keep going back and forth on this particular table. And so pardon me if it comes back again. Well, you mentioned that, of course, you do not want the European countries to be, of course, consuming vegetables or produce from Ghana that are quite contaminated. And, of course, even the Ghanaian people themselves as well. While you're here for 4 years, you have been here for, say, a few months already, and beyond you submitting your credentials to the president. The impact of it, the way we're going as a country, what can you foretell? What can you foresee?
It's early days for me to foresee anything. What I sense is that it's a multi-layered, a very complex issue. I also understand that there is a difference on the perspective on whether you live in urban areas or in rural areas. I think that it is still a bit theoretical and speculative for many people, but that the concrete consequences are just around the corner, because it's not only about export to Europe, it's also about what if Ghana suddenly has to import its own drinking water? Then I think the Ghanaians, then it becomes very real to the Ghanaians. And if not before, then I think it will be addressed.
Right. I've also just been reading about the Global Gateway Initiative. I'm quite interested in that. What's in it for Ghana?
So that is what I alluded to before when I talked about our new tools and instruments. I think back in 2022, at the African Union EU Summit, the Global Gateway was launched. A Global Gateway is a merger of development financing, of international financing institutions and private sector. It is EU that offers 300 billion euros, of which half should go to the African continent. So there's 150 billion euros for Africa here. Now, we are leaving the old logic of donor-beneficiary relations. We are leaving it because there's too much demand for European resources. We need to get used to having a war at our doorstep with the Russian aggression against Ukraine. We need to be able to address the multiple crises that we see throughout the world. And we also see that there's increasing demand. And the Global Gateway, with its 150 billion for Africa, transform what we used to give as grants into investments.
Okay.
It is what's in it for Ghana depends a lot on Ghana. If Ghana can make itself an attractive harbor for investments, and it is now, we have over $1 billion already coming to Ghana for major infrastructure projects, for vaccine production, for solar parks, for clean cities and water in the north. So there are lots of stuff is happening. But of course, just like Ghanaians, I want more of it to come to Ghana. And this is what I intend to work on in the coming 4 years, is to make sure that Ghana is more attractive for investments, not just more attractive than it is now, but more attractive than its neighboring countries, because it's a competitive world out there, and because it's private sector driven, they are in it for the bottom line, you can imagine. And so we need to make sure that Ghana is attractive in terms of facility of establishing business, in terms of possibilities of doing the right things. And then it's important that Global Gateway is not just an investment package. It's a European investment package. So it comes in accordance with European principles about quality, about sustainability, and durability.
I mean, with the desire to make Ghana one of those attractive hubs for investments, so that it's not just focusing, when you think about the EU and Ghana, what you're thinking about is grants. If Ghana was just a person sitting in front of you like me now, what tips would you be given to that Ghana person that we could do to help us achieve this your goal?
I think that Ghana needs to look around and see what are the potentials we have here. Ghana has a number of comparative advantages in terms of skills, but maybe there's still some things to be refined. In terms of infrastructure, certainly with the ports in Tema and Takoradi, it's a huge advantage, but maybe there are still things to be refined when it comes to creating corridors both along the coast and north and south. When it comes to connectivity, it works. We all see that internet is functional. Maybe it can be optimized. Those are elements that comes to mind. Then, of course, there's a whole, bureaucratic processing also. Is it easy to establish business in Ghana? How seamless is it for European investors to travel to Ghana? Is it easy to obtain a visa when you want to go to Ghana?
Right.
How long can you stay and do your exploratory work? All these things are maybe low-hanging fruits that could be looked at to make sure that Ghana is competitive.
I mean, you've traveled quite wide, working diplomatic work a lot more. Before your coming to Ghana, just overview, how would you rate our upholding of human rights and rule of law as a country? And how it fits in the bigger mandate of the EU, which is one of your core mandates as well. How would you rate us as a country?
So, human rights, governance, universal freedoms, absolutely important for the EU. With the development of the EU from being a traditional donor towards being a diplomatic partner, with the development of our tools going from grants to investments, the prism we see these things through has changed. So I would say when it comes to governance and when it comes to human rights, I would say, like with bureaucracy, with the ports, with the connectivity, with the infrastructures in place, I would say, look at it through the investment prism. What would the investor like to see? Would the investor like to see a well-governed country or a country that is not so well-governed? Would the investor like to see a country where there is universal freedoms or where it's a bit more pragmatic? To me, it's quite clear, and I can only speak for the European investors, but they would like to see governance. They would like to see human rights. They'd like to see universal freedoms. That's a space that Europeans are used to work in. Now, you ask how Ghana is doing. Ghana is obviously doing fairly well. I would say quite decently on the full range of criteria. But of course, there are irritants out there. That is not for me to point at, but for the Ghanaians to consider, can we do better to attract investments?
Okay. Because I've heard you say countless times you want to make Ghana one of those countries that is very attractive for European investors. Of course, one of the things you'll be looking out for is what you've just said, human rights, good governance. Let's talk about security. Security
is it was already a major issue 30 years ago when I came. Ghana was an island of stability in a sea of very unruly waters. Today, it's the same. I would say even accentuated with the whole Sahel at its borders. Ghana enjoys this reputation of a stable, peaceful democracy, and that is definitely a situation that we want to assist Ghana in maintaining. We are doing that with our security partnership, which is being developed as we speak, but also with our support through our regular cooperation, through our European Peace Facility, and through the EU Security and Defense Initiative, where we give significant amounts of equipment to security also. So we are very active in supporting Ghana in this respect because it matters to Ghana and it matters to us.
Paint a clearer picture of grants or donor to investment. Paint a better picture for me. When I was young, a lot of the time when I heard about the EU, first thing that would come to mind will be donor grants. What kind of help a country like Ghana would get from EU and all of that. But today, I see the conversation shifting quite slightly to investment. What's the comparison now? What's the weight of grants or donor grants to investment?
I think it's important to bring in a historical perspective. The EU was a smaller entity 50 years ago when we first arrived here. It was created of major colonial powers. It was a grant package to a number of African, Pacific, and Caribbean countries which had been colonized, and we were trying to compensate for that. But that's 50, 60 years ago. Today, the world has changed. The impact of the development aid that was given is not so obvious. When what really made Ghana grow was not development aid, it was probably the oil offshore. And that we have seen in multiple countries. Now, what we have seen also in the meantime is that the world has grown increasingly interdependent. We need Ghana as much as Ghana needs us. And this is where we go into a more equal political partnering where we identify shared agenda items and we address them together.
Okay.
And the investment comes in here as a way of doing it.
Okay. Sorry. I've seen and I've also heard you talk about what the EU will do, at least to indirectly compel Ghana to do what is needful: sustainable mining, sustainable timber trading, and all of that. But overall, we can put that under proper environmental and climate change conversation. Are the EU stable? How well is Ghana doing?
I think Ghana, like many countries, have challenges. Challenges because you are a fast-growing economy, and you need to cater for the expectations of the people, the justified expectations of the people of Ghana. And you are now doing this in an era where there is much more focus on what kind of energy we're using, what kind of pollution. And this is where we have the COP meetings to find a reasonable balance between the needs to grow as an economy and the right to pollute. And how can we compensate for the CO2 emissions that are not coming out of Ghana at the price of development? But this is what is being discussed centrally. What we can do here is to help Ghana explore the huge potential it has in clean energy. And that is what we're doing with the solar parks. That's what we're doing when we are investing in the Pong rehabilitation of the dam. This is what we do when we help Ghana building clean cities. So we try to support Ghana in what we and Ghana think is the right thing. We do nothing without consulting with government first.
Do you by chance have a special focus on the youth?
We do have a special focus on the youth because the youth is, of course, the future. So we do in different ways. First of all, we have established here in Ghana what we call a youth sounding board. This is a group of Ghanaian youth that we see on a regular basis to discuss programming activities, to get an understanding of what is moving, really, what is concerning the youth, what can we do better, what do they see as a future. Then, of course, we offer a series of scholarships for the youth in Europe, because we also think that the youth is the future ambassadors of the EU, if you like, in Ghana. And then we have a series of activities in Ghana also for the youth, where we try to address exactly the skill levels that are so crucial for future investment also, namely in the TVET sector. So yes, we are considering the youth, and we think that's where the potential is. However, as always with potential, it needs to be harnessed.
What did you call it? The Youth Sounding Board? That's what you call it. Okay. And every youth in Ghana can be part of this, so how? So on
with regular intervals, we recruit 20 youth, I think, to be on this sounding board, and then they accompany me or colleagues on missions. We invite them to meetings and events. We discuss. I think we have a delegation of European parliamentarians coming in tonight, and there we will also have a few members of the Youth Sounding Board meeting with them to interact.
Well, Ruben, you just arrived, and we're not going to go into all of the details and all of that. I'll wait a bit. Maybe after some months, or maybe after a while, we can just come back and revisit some of the goals, some of the ambitions that you've set out to achieve for Ghana, and also harness the relationship between Ghana and the EU. By the way, what Ghanaian slang have you learned already in Ghana since you arrived?
Of language?
Yes, the Ghanaian slang.
Apart from the Akwaba, that meets me everywhere.
That meets you everywhere then. I bet you're going to be learning more since you're staying here with us.
I hope so. I'd love to come back. Thank you, Nefa, for receiving me this morning. And I hope you will hold me accountable also to my visions. It's one of my strengths. I love to hold people accountable, and especially you, I will. Thank you so much, Rune, for joining us. Well, that is the EU ambassador to Ghana, Rune Skinneberg. Thank you so much for joining us. You're watching the AM show. Please stay. There's more.